Your 3D renders suck, don't they? You look at popular channels like Show It Better, Upstairs, and when they're doing the videos on the portfolios, and you just think, wow. That's what I used to think. It wasn't until I kind of took a blindsided approach of just completely ignoring those sort of voices and just going for it, just having to do. The more you practice it, the more you pick up the steps and little details that really add up layers of detail, because that's basically all these stunning renders that you see are. It's just layers of detail on top of each other that create a more immersive, realistic outcome. I'll share with you some of the steps that I've learned about how to create that immersion and that realistic storytelling that even AI can't comprehend to. So I'm just coming over to my system because I want to show a recent sort of conceptual environment that I did. All the points are still valid. This is how the first render started off, and this is just a broad render, just a simple one after I've put the environment together, just to kind of get an idea of what I need to sort of improve on. So straight away I know that some of these vegetation colours, we need a bit more variation, or maybe depending on the scene, maybe it needs to be more a solid type of colour where there isn't as much variation. The rock placement, the lighting, all depending on the narrative. So for this it was more to do with like a lone pirate taking on the British Empire at the time, obviously with the pirate ship in the background, with a sort of a mystical element that I put together with these rocks here inside of a cave. As I will expand on, we'll see the progress as it's going on, as I start to add more stuff, like an implementation of say a waterfall, bits of more stuff over towards the left, pirate flag, and then actually adding pirate in, simulating gunshot with smoke. At the time I reduced the size of the pirate ship. I later brought it back because I thought it needed, you know, to fit the narrative. I'll just go through towards the end. As you can see, go back, forth, you can see the differences that I'm bringing, and this is where I get to the final one. This isn't the final, this is more to before I properly touch it up, do more edits to it in Photoshop and the post-processing part. You can see from the beginning how it starts off, adding more colour grading, etc. Dirt, dust, particles, decals, textures, everything, just birds, vegetation, everything to layers of detail that just add to the sort of realism. And this was the M1 if I'm correct, where I just added a bit of my smoke bits here, a bit more touch up, a little bit of noise and stuff there, so with a splash. And that's just one example. I'm just going to go through more conceptual ones, because I feel like you put more assets and storytelling parts. I think it's good to practice the conceptual type of environments, because it helps push your boundaries a bit more, so you start learning certain stuff or putting certain assets in that you want to use, or maybe do a certain technique on how you applied scattering area into emotion, to which you wouldn't have used before, or in the same way implemented it, say in a more professional standpoint of 3D rendering for a client, let's say. For this one, it was more like a cyberpunky inspired kind of BioShock 2077, I called it. This is one point, is of course perspective camera angle composition. For this I just wanted for a narrow street, so more of a 9x16 vertical, this being the key point here being the frame of the foreground, and then here being sort of the midsection, and then here being the background. So you got to prioritize where your time is being spent, what the narrative is, what the story is, where is your time being allocated to. If it's something a closer up shot on the foreground, you want to spend more time with higher textures, etc., more time on the foreground. Wherever the narrative is, or whatever the story is, if it's something in the distance, that's what you kind of spend the most time to. But typically it's usually closer. You want to 9 times out of 10 have higher textures, better lighting, everything higher fidelity. Closer, further it goes away, lower the level of details, LODs. And then again, I wanted to make this more of a nearish nighttime-ish overcast scene, so I'll start adding again a lot more detail, even more detail with adding the the arch here. Sometimes I'll just ask ChatGPT. I'll put it into ChatGPT, this is the aim, this is what I want to go for, give me examples of how to improve it. And to be fair to it, sometimes it'll give you some very relevant points, and you'll be like, well, you can touch up this, something on that. But don't always take it for gospel. Sometimes I've done stuff that it says and it's like, nah, this ain't it. It did offer a few good points with this. I asked it to highlight in red on the picture, where should I make XYZ adjustments that you should refer to. So this is what the chat said, and I thought they were quite good implements to it. And I think this was the end one, where it said to add something to here. It was talking about adding a puddle here, more roughness here, heart symbol here. Yeah, this scene is like, it's kind of a crime scene alleyway within a cyberpunky environment. Pretty much on all your renders you want to be adding some sort of vegetation, unless it's like a desert. I don't know, there's something about, well, if you get high poly trees, it just adds a straight away, it's like almost a cheat code of just adding high fidelity just to help with a more realistic render. So that's more conceptual side of things. I'll go to one that I did a bit more recently, which was a kid's bedroom. This is how it started off, quite plain. I'm just adding stuff into it here, and then when I go say to, obviously there's a lot of iterations on this, because I was playing around with path tracing and luminosity. Well, can I get Lumen to look as good as path tracing? And in this example, interior scenes, like Lumen does very well on as well. As you see, is this under Lumen? No, this is path tracing. But if I go to the Lumen one, but what is good is with the Lumen is that you've got a decent system of keyflex, I guess. You can go to like 16K, and within the time of it doing a 16K quality, like even a path tracing one, just 1024 samples hasn't even been done, and you can compress them in Photoshop. We're still keeping the quality pretty much the same. And you can literally zoom all the way in and see what was even being talked about on that, for example. And they're all Lumen. Well, of course they're 16K, but even if I go to 4K, you know, they're still, you know, they are quite well done, I'd say. And even if you go to the path tracing ones that I did, there's not that much, you know, when you compare them, it's not really that much difference, which is great because Lumen takes nowhere near the same amount of time as path tracing does because it's so demanding. So this is another example with a more landscaping project. These are before, and these are afters. How you get to making immersive sort of experiences, of course the number one is narrative, getting down the story of what it is that you're trying to portray, get context, where is it located, gather some information about areas of where it's situated, the type of neighbouring textures, vegetation. Actually in Twinmotion, deciding composition and camera angling, what type of camera you're going to use. Are you going to use quite a close-up immersive shot or narrow wide lens view so you can get more of the designing? But you've got to keep in mind of course it all comes down to the purpose of the shot. Is it something that's being implemented in the design that needs to be shown? Because what you don't want to be doing is spending too much time on things, putting in assets you're just not going to see. So if you're doing still images, only do what the camera can pick up on. It's got bits of windows or whatever outside maybe, then maybe you want to put like a close-up HDRI for that, or some vegetation just to kind of block out sort of the in the background for the reflections. Maybe got a mirror of reflections at the front that are quite close up. And another vegetation easy way of adding high fidelity, you've got high poly. I know Max Tree website has a free one, I think it's Max Vol 60 or something. You can get them for free, and that's what's in this render here. Not these ones though. These are, well, this is an overlay of Creo plus Photoshop and a hybrid workflow that I've kind of mustered up. Let me know if you want to see that video about how I use my hybrid workflow between Twinmotion raw renders, then I put it in with the Creo, and then use the raw render and the Creo version and overlay and masking with Photoshop. I could do that as an example, I guess. Let me know if you want me to do a video showcasing that. And another one is textures. Again, foreground, you want to have more higher quality. 4K is like optimal, really, is the optimal texture size, I would say. And recently I've been playing around with creating an asset library of 8K to do with all the Quixel scans in there. If you want me to create, let's say, a library and send that, you know, make it downloadable for you guys, let me know as well. I'm doing it for myself in order to create more higher fidelity quality conceptual art pieces, but if you want to use them for whatever, then, you know, that can be something I can let you guys have for free. But obviously it's for free. It's for free anyway. But it's just Twinmotion as an offer, doing it like on the Unreal way, where you can just easily drag and drop it pretty much. It only goes up to 4K with the Twinmotion one, so you have to, if you want 8K ones, you have to do the bridge and manually kind of bring stuff in, which has been quite a tedious process, but we're getting there. Narrative, composition, camera angle, storytelling. Don't just, don't make it plain. For this, obviously, it's plain because it's showing the design. It doesn't need somebody utilising the space. If it was, say, more of a restaurant, or if you spoke to the client and they say they specifically want something, then add that in. If you think it's just going to make things a bit worse, then I just wouldn't show it. Sometimes it's best where less is more, in quite a few cases where it's just showing the design. In some places it's definitely better than if you add in animated people. They have to go extra step and then blur them. It's just more work that you don't really need to do. So let's analyse this picture and see what's sort of going on. So of course I've got a nice sort of what would be local stone, a modern cladding, but these 4K textures just brought in from Megascans. This grass is a mixture between, of course, Twinmotion, and it's not obvious, but some people might pick up on it, that it's Twinmotion and Korea blended. Also, you got to think of the purpose of the video. I mean, these were going to go for socials as well, so this is just my sort of cut for it, that I prefer the more vertical aspect ratio, just for the more social aspects of it. As well, decals are absolutely essential. I'll show here, hopefully my system will crash open it because it's quite a big file. Of the Cyberpunk one, if I show, for example, the decals on this scene, there's quite a lot. And again, talking about foreground and importance, the amount of detail that's sort of here compared to the rest of it isn't nowhere near in comparison. So I usually have that as the main story. So that's this main area. See where the decals is for comparison. The vegetation, again, adding a whole new level of immersion because of the fidelity of the high poly, and lighting as well. Understand lighting, you can easily look up on Google, or you could just ask chat. Honestly, if you don't know, chat is like one of ChatGPT's. It's one of the but I recommend utilising it for specific sort of questions, like insure and anything. Even the free version, like, it'll give you a good stead of how you should go about it. If you're new to, say, to creating 3D rendering environments, definitely utilise what's free and what's already out there. Analyse people's works, or you could join the Twinmotion Facebook group, look at people that tend to do pretty well in terms of the likes and what you think, look at what they've done, inspect it with a good eye, and just ask, break it down layer by layer. Now, if I were to break this down, this was just grass, so I added in the flagstones, put in more of a variation of grass to make it a little bit more realistic. I've added, of course, the actual design pieces, and then manually, it wasn't manually, I did it by area, but manually adjusting different settings for different vegetations that I've put in to make it look a bit more natural. Adding some parts of the symmetry, asymmetrical, can sometimes come across better in more realism as well. Decals, and if to add bits of roughness, dirts, because it just adds another imperfection on the scene, which is actually a good thing, because we don't live in a perfect world, and these things are about, if you just look in everyday life, that's how you create have another level of immersion to create a more realistic output. For still images, definitely use path tracer if you can, and the higher quality you can get, the better in general picture tends to be, because the lighting is more casts of rays that have bounced around the scene, giving more accurate reflections within the scene. So I hope that helps cover some things up. So just to brief over again, so by the narrative, story, angles, composition, thinking about the story in terms of obviously the foreground, midground and the background. Spend more time on what is closer than far away. Add more high level detailed textures to what's closer in particular than far away. Go for more, look at it as more of an 8K, 4K, 2K, or 4K, 2K, 1K, let's say. But you don't, 2K is a bit minimum, to be honest. Then after that, vegetation, and then lighting. But then sometimes, going back here, sometimes in terms with the camera angle and composition, it depends, it varies per project. If you know you're going to be doing one shot or a couple of particular shots in certain places on a particular project, and that's all you need to do, then fine, only fill out, only put in assets in that viewport and in the reflective space. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time inevitably. Do more work than it's not even going to get appreciated, because it's not even going to be in the shots. So final part is post-processing, whether that be with DaVinci Resolve or Premiere if you do more video style stuff, or with post-processing with Photoshop and adding filter, film grains and tweaks can always help. I never really just go for raw render, to be honest, just from the engine. I always suggest adding a bit of a touch up, even if it's just slightly. You tend to get better results when you start messing around with the sliders. That's pretty much my process every time. It's what's the story, I'm picking a composition, what's the meaning of it, am I doing a video or am I just doing one shot, couple shots, filling them spaces, add layers of detail, what objects I am putting there, then layering that as the textures, decals, vegetation, props, assets, and all different techniques inside of Twinmotion or whichever you're using, because they all kind of usually have some sort of scatter or technique, let's say, to easily put in a lot of assets quite easily. In terms of your smaller type of objects, more is better usually. Adding more variation, randomness, and then adding in storytelling aspects of it if required, which again would be reflected on the narrative to begin with, so you'd know where you're going to go with that. And then you export settings, of course, and what type of resolution and stuff you're going for. Post-processing to put the nail in the head, let's say, and really polish any sort of tweaks and stuff that need doing. And that's pretty much my process every single time on how I went from beginning of the video and say that pirate scene of being blank to pretty much a blank canvas to being on adding that extra layers of realism. So yeah, I'll see you next one.